Okay, so it's time for us to look at this enter bill, which is a text field. Now, text fields can be a little bit complicated. There are a few moving parts that we need to really understand. But in overall, it's not that bad. Okay, let's take a look at this. So the idea is when we add a value here, enter bill, we want to make sure that, of course, we want to make sure that this value is propagated everywhere, meaning all of the other composable functions need to be aware of it one way or the other, because that's what drives everything, right? If we add a number here, the enter bill, right, the actual amount, only then will we be able to say split and have meaningful values. Meaningful values, I mean meaningful total per person and so forth. Now, on top of that, we have the tip, right? We have to slide left or right to get the percentage of tip that we want to pay or add to our bill. So there's a lot of moving parts here. So we need to be careful where we put things and how that thing compares or interacts with other variables, other states in this app. So what do we need to do actually? There are different ways to do this, especially when it comes to creating text fields. Now, we could right away just go ahead and create a text field here, or there are different kinds of text fields, right? We can use, for instance, the outline text field and go from there. And that's totally fine. We can do that and pass all the variables that we need and go from there. But I'm not going to do that, at least not in this example. What we're going to do is we are going to create inside our project, inside of our package, I'm going to create yet another package. So right click, say new package. This is good just to separate code, right? Separate all the classes that we create that are related, we put in one package. So this package I'm going to call components. This is just a place where we can create components, which means usually you create widgets or functions, in this case, composable functions that do a certain thing, right? So you can put that inside of a components. And so now I'm going to create a new class or Kotlin class or file here. Just say file and components. Okay. So all the components we want, we can add them here. Okay. So the one component I'm going to create here, say add composable, of course, and then I'm going to say fun, I'm going to say input field, right? And as such. All right. So what are we going to be passing here? Well, we're going to be passing a few things, because remember this input field, we want to make sure that it can be used anywhere. Okay, so it will encapsulate all the behaviors of a text field, and we can customize as we see fit. All right, so I'm going to pass first of all a modifier. So, oh, I passed the wrong one. You see, it's the reflection. We don't want that. We want a different kind of modifier, which is, I'm going to keep typing, modifier, get the Android X Compose UI. There we go. And because I want to make sure that this modifier here is not required, so I'm going to add, say, modifier as such to say this is a default parameter that if users don't add a modifier when they call input field composable, right, it's okay. We're just going to use whatever we have inside here. So this is optional. That's how you make a modifier optional. Okay, now still inside here we need to pass a few other parameters. Now every input field has to have some sort of state, because the idea really is to be listening to what is being typed here, and we can validate and we can see if it's time for us to get rid of the keyboard and so forth. So there's a lot of things that are happening, so we need to control that. So what I'm going to add here as our parameter is value state. Okay, the value state of our text field. Now, because everything is about state in this case, that means we have to pass a variable that is allowed or is supposed to mutate, but most importantly, it's supposed to hold values whose reads and writes are observed by Compose. right? So any function that is calling this function here, this composable, can react to those values. That's the whole idea. So I can pass one here by saying mutable state, like that, and I can pass a type that it will conform to, which is going to be string. Okay. In this case, also I'm going to pass just a few metadata called label ID. You'll see all of this later. I'm going to be a string, and then I'm going to pass enabled, which is going to be a boolean. So I'm going to say boolean as such, and then I'm going to pass is single line, just to, it's also going to be a boolean to say, in this case, whenever I want to call this input field, I can set up, say, okay, I want this input field to be just single line, meaning when they enter text, it's never going to expand to allow multiple lines of text as it's been entered. All right. And then I'm going to say keyboard type, because remember, being an input text field, there are different kinds of keyboard types. So we need to, in this case, set up the keyboard type, or at least tell the compose compiler what kind of keyboard we want. So I'm going to just go ahead and say, for the sake of time, I'm going to say keyboard type like this. I'm going to just say it's going to be equal to keyboard type, not ASCII, we want number. We're just saying we want to be able to just enter numbers. Now we could also make it more flexible in that users can pass the type, but this is fine. All right, and next I'm going to pass the IME action like this. What is this? Well, IME action, if you hover over, it says signals the keyboard what type of action should be displayed, right? And we'll see how this works. For instance, so in this case, our IME action, I'm going to just set it right away to say IME action. There's different actions. There's go, there's next, there's none. And in this case, I'm just going to use the next. So when something is entered, we want to show, okay, what should they do? They being the users, right? And should show at the bottom here. If the keyboard is showing, should show at the bottom, say next or go or whatever, or enter. So we're specifying that. Okay. And then I'm going to pass on action. Again, I'm going to say keyboard actions. This, and I'm going to set that directly to say keyboard actions. I don't want a lambda, I just want to get default keyboard actions. All right, there we go. So this is what we may potentially pass when we invoke our input field. All right, so now that we have our parameters created, now we go inside of our input. Now we go inside of this composable. So the contents of this composable. What do we want to show? Well, we want to show the outline, in this case, outline text field. That is what we want. There are different kinds of text fields. We're going to use outlined. So for value here, we already created. I'm going to say value state. I'm going to get the value as such. Right? And every text field, be it outlined or any other kind, if it's text field, we have this call. We have this parameter or argument we have to pass. It's a callback that is triggered when the input service updates the text, right? So what is that we want to happen as we update the text? Well, in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and pass a lambda on value text, and I'm going to say the state, right? It's going to be in this an integer. I'm going to get the value. I'm going to pass it. I'm going to make it equal to IT. So whatever we're getting from our text field here, we're going to just pass into our value state, which is what we have created at the top here, the actual value as they type. And if you have an over outline text field, there's so many things you can pass, right? One of which is we can pass label and value and so many other things. All right, let's continue. So make sure we're inside of the parentheses here. This is where we pass the parameters. Yes, we are. I'm going to say comma, and let's add something else for the label of this. For the label argument, notice here it is indeed a lambda. We can just go enter and put inside of a lambda here. I'm going to say pass in a text, and this text is going to have what? It's going to have our label ID. So essentially we're going to have some sort of like this, something like this, enter bill, like that. Okay, so we are customizing our input field. So when we call input field, as you will see later, we can pass what is it that we want to show for the label and pass the state and so forth. All right, I hope this is not too bad. And then I'm going to say leading icon if I want to. In this case, yes, I do. It's a lambda again, simplifies our life. I'm going to invoke the icon. Look at this. This is all coming from Compose. So we can actually add an icon from here. Very good. So I'm going to use the image vector. There are different icon functions there. Image vector, in this case, I can then invoke the icons, right, from Android Compose material icons. All this comes, by default. And then I can go to a val default or filled. I'm going to go to rounded, okay, and say, I'm going to say attach. Let's see. Attach money. Now, here's a problem. Some of the material icons are not included from the get-go in our project. That means then we'll have to include them in our project. The reason being is because the icons can be heavy in a sense that can add more bytes to your project, overall size of your project. So that's the reason why they're not readily available. Some of them are, but most of them are not. Okay, so if you want to get more icons, we'll have to actually add that dependency, which will allow us to get all those icons. And how do we do that? Let me show you. So we'll have to open, let's make sure that we don't have errors here. So for now, I'm just going to add something different, right? So we don't have an error. Let's see, running or refresh. Okay, so we have something. And let's finalize this. We need to put in a description because of visually impaired users. So we need to add description of images and icons that we're adding. I'm going to say money icon, even though it's refreshed. That's okay. All right, so we're going to open our project and then we're going to go to Gradle scripts. And then we're going to go to, there's two Gradles. There's the app project Gradle and there's the module Gradle. So click on this one. And what we want to do is scroll down anywhere here, and most likely you're going to see all of this. So it's okay. We'll come back to all of this and we'll fix or update things. But for now, what we're going to do, somewhere at the bottom here, what I like to do is add 2 forward slashes to say comment. I'm going to say icons. And then what you are going to do, I'm going to say implementation as such. Okay, wait for a second, get rid of that. And put in inside of double quotes and start typing something like this: Android x.compose. Okay, say material. I know this because I have on my other project. And then I'm saying material. Make sure you type exactly. Dash icons dash extended. And then you put colon and then you say $, say compose version like this. Okay, so once you're done, let's go ahead and say sync. So what we're doing here, we added this dependency, which will allow the Gradle, which is the mastermind of the entire project, to go and fetch this dependency at this, to go and fetch this in the repository that is really far away and get all those material icons that we need. Okay, again, only use this if you need certain icons that the default project doesn't give you. So it may take a little while. You can look at the bottom here. Gradle is working, doing its work. Just wait and come back when it's done. All right, after a few moments, you'll see that everything is good. Nothing is, everything has stopped and that's good. No errors, nothing. Okay, let's close out of this. Now back to our components. Let's go back to our icons around it. We don't want to refresh. We want something special, which is money. I'm going to say money. There we go. Attach money. Now we have access to a plethora of icons, which is what we want. All right, there we go. Okay, so continuing. Right then, I'm going to put, yes, pass another parameter here or argument, which is single line. This is, you see now the thought process here, because we're passing all of these parameters and then we're using them because this is going to be customized. We're going to call anywhere we want. We can pass these parameters and then we're going to construct our outlined text field passing with these parameters we're passing, or in this case, arguments that we're going to be passing, right? So here I'm just going to say is single line. So we're going to pass whatever the users or whatever is passed here when we invoke input field. Let's continue. Then I'm going to say text style that we want to show here. I'm just going to say text style, and I'm going to put a font size of about 18.sp. That's another unit to use when it comes to text, or text I should say. You should use sp instead of dp. Okay, and we want a color. Say color. I'm going to use material, theme, colors, and I'm going to use the on background. So this is really good and will make sense later. On background is the color that is used throughout the app, whether it's in dark mode or in a light mode, it will still show this text, right? All right, let's continue here. Again, we're still inside of outlined text field. So there are a lot of things that we can actually customize. If you hover over again, you can see all of these parameters that we've looked at. So text style, we looked at that, enabled, and so forth. All right, so let's go and add yet another one. In this case, I want to add the enabled. And for enabled, I'm going to say I want this to be enabled. So I'm going to pass whatever we're getting from the user or from where this is being called. And then I'm going to pass the keyboard options. Okay. And I'm going to say keyboard options such. And then I'm going to say keyboard inside. Pass the keyboard type that we are passing. Keyboard type. Okay. So we're setting up. And then I'm going to say IME action. It's going to be the IME action that we've passed, and that's that. And then we're going to continue. I'm going to say keyboard actions now. I'm going to say on action, which is exactly what we passed. You can see now all of these parameters, are now visible, are now highlighted because we are using them. So it doesn't look like much, but we did the groundwork here. Now we can use this input field anywhere, as you will see in the next video, and pass everything and pass all these arguments, and we should be good. Now it looks like looks like our modifier here is not being called. Let's go to, if you have over again the on text field, we should pass the modifier. Yes, let's come down here. After text, I'm just going to say modifier. I'm going to set to our modifier that we're passing potentially. And I'm going to say dot padding. I'm going to just use some padding here. So I'm going to add the bottom padding about 10 dp and start. Looks like we need to import dp, the unit. And the start is also going to be 10 dp. End is also going to be 10 dp. So essentially we're saying whenever we call this input field, we're going to create this outline text field, and we're going to add some sort of padding around it. So in the next video, we are going to actually use this input inside of our main where we are constructing our user interface.